Hey there, tonight we're sailing back, not with the Vikings, but against them. Not as warriors, but as the unlucky people on the shore. Because long before Viking helmets became Halloween costumes and longboats were sold as Lego sets, they were something else. Something terrifying. If you've ever watched a movie where Viking raiders crash onto the beach and charge into battle while drums pound and flames rise, you've seen it from their side. But tonight, we're flipping the view. What was it like if you were already living there, peaceful, ordinary, not ready, not armed? No swords, no warning, no plan, just you, your village, and the sound of boots in the mud, the distant thump of oars, the rising smell of smoke. This isn't about kings and battles, it's about waking up in a fishing town with no walls and realizing that the people rowing toward you don't want to trade fish. So take a deep breath. Wrap yourself in something soft. You're not in danger now, but for the people back then, on the edges of the British Isles, on the coasts of Francia, on the shores of Ireland and beyond, it was never about if they would come. It was when. This is boring history for sleep. And tonight, the Vikings are coming. Let's begin. Close your eyes and imagine this. It's early morning, the kind of morning that doesn't rush you. You're still wrapped in your blanket. The fire's burned down to a quiet glow, and outside your cottage window, the sky is just starting to change from deep blue to soft grey. There's the faint clink of a pail. A goat bleats somewhere nearby. Someone's already walking to the river. It's going to be an ordinary day. But then the bell rings, not the church bell, not the kind that means prayer or a wedding or a warning about the rain. It's the kind that rings too fast, too hard, with no rhythm and no ceremony, just panic. You sit up before you realize what you're hearing. Someone is shouting, then someone else, then several voices, layered over each other, rising like smoke. It's not words yet, it's just fear. You throw on your cloak, no shoes, no time. By the time you step outside, the sound is bigger than the village. It's in the air now, woven into the wind. The fishermen are pointing toward the coast. Their faces look like they've already been slapped. A few people are running, a few are just standing still. You follow their gaze, and that's when you see it, the sails. Not one, not two. A line of them, white and bone, coloured, rising up out of the morning fog like teeth. Longboats, with carved dragons on the prow and shields hanging down the sides like scales. They aren't floating gently. They're moving fast, too fast for trade, too quiet for friends. Simon whispers the word, you don't want to believe it, but it's already spreading from mouth to mouth like a cold draught. Vikings. You've never seen them before, not up close, but you've heard the stories everyone has. They come from across the sea, from lands with hard names and harder men. They don't knock, they don't ask, they arrive and they take. There's no wall around your town, no army waiting on the edge of the beach, just a few fishermen with nets and old knives. The church has a bell, but no plan. The monastery has silver and books and no real weapons. You don't know what to do. No one does. Some people are trying to run. Others are frozen, like prey that just noticed the hawk. A woman grabs her child and vanishes into the trees. A man falls to his knees in prayer. Another one shouts that we should fight, but no one listens. You look back at the boats. They're closer now. You can see the oars slicing through the water in rhythm. You can see the glint of something metal. You can hear it too. The beat, the drum. Not loud but steady, like a heartbeat that doesn't belong to anyone here. You were supposed to spend today mending a fence, maybe baking bread. Instead, you're staring at the sea, waiting for strangers to hit the shore. And now you know. This is not an ordinary morning. This is the kind of morning you'll spend the rest of your life remembering. If you live, at first it's just noise. Scattered voices, the sharp bray of a frightened donkey, a baby crying somewhere in the distance. You're still standing barefoot in the dirt, but it doesn't feel like your village anymore. It's too loud, too fast. There's a weight in the air that wasn't there an hour ago. You can't see it, but you can feel it pressing down behind your ears, coiling in your stomach. A pressure that tells you, this is not just panic. This is fear. The boats are getting closer. You can hear the water now, not waves, oars. Dozens of them, dipping and rising in unison. A sound that doesn't belong here. Not in this quiet corner of the world. Not where your family has lived for generations. But there it is. Rhythmic, relentless. And underneath that steady splash of wood and sea, there's something else. A faint metallic clatter, like chains, or armor, or weapons shifting in a wooden boat. Someone yells again, a name maybe, or a warning. You can't tell, everything blends together now. The shouts, the bells, the rising wind, people start moving without direction. Some run toward the hills, others head for the church, as if stone walls and prayers might slow down a Viking's axe. You follow without thinking, not toward anything in particular, just away. But there's no order, no plan, just the awful realization that no one here is prepared for this. Why would they be? Your village isn't on a map. It's barely a dot in the corner of someone's scroll. There are no guards, no garrison, just you and your neighbors. And the sound of your world coming apart. You pass the baker's hut. He's dropping loaves onto the ground as he fumbles with his door. Smoke curls up from his chimney like nothing's changed. But you know better. The bread's still warm, but the world around it is burning. Someone falls. A boy. He trips over a chicken coop and lands hard. His mother grabs him by the wrist and pulls him up before he even cries. No one speaks. There's no time. Everyone moves like animals now, shoulders hunched, eyes wide, legs shaking with a kind of instinct that doesn't need words. Then the bell stops. The big one in the tower. You didn't even realize it had been ringing all this time. But now that it's silent, the quiet is worse than the noise. Like something final has begun or ended. You look back once, just once. The first boat is already touching the shore. The men inside stand up. Their clothes are darker than yours. Their faces are unreadable. They don't run. They step forward with a calm that terrifies you more than shouting ever could. You turn and keep running behind you. The sound of fear changes. It becomes something harder, a scream, a crash, the start of something you can't stop. And in that moment you understand. Fear doesn't always feel like a scream. Sometimes it's the silence that comes just before. The first thing you notice is that it doesn't belong. It comes too fast, creeping through the cracks in the wooden walls, brushing the back of your neck as you press yourself against the earth. You're hiding now, barely, in the corner of a barn, under hay that smells like dust and old animal sweat. Your knees are pressed to your chest, your face buried in your sleeve. But it's the heat that finds you first. Then the smoke. It doesn't smell like the hearth. It doesn't carry the comfort of a home, cooked stew, or the sharp scent of peat. This smoke bites. It chokes. It curls into your eyes and makes them sting, even before the fire reaches the barn itself. Somewhere outside, something wooden collapses. Maybe it's a roof. Maybe it's the baker's hut, the one you ran past. Either way, it's gone now. The sound is hollow, like bones breaking underfoot. You can hear them moving. The men from the boat, their boots thudding on soil that was yours yesterday. Their voice is low but clear. Not in your language, not even close. Harsh vowels, laughter, that doesn't sound like joy. A command barked. A door kicked open. Then another. Every sound is sharp and fast, like someone ripping your life into smaller pieces. A scream rises, close and high. You flinch, though you already knew this part was coming. You've heard the stories, everyone has. You just didn't believe you'd ever live through one. You were supposed to die in bed at 70. Not today, not like this, not by fire. The smoke thickens. It crawls down your throat. You want to cough, but you don't. You can't. You've seen what happens to people who make noise. There was a man just moments ago who burst out of the grain store with a shovel raised like it meant something. One of the raiders cut him down with a single swing. Not even an argument, not even a pause. Something near you catches. You hear it before you see it. The hiss, the sudden whoosh. The edge of the hay is glowing now. Orange light licks the wall behind you. It won't be long. You can't stay here. But where would you go? The forest is full. The river's too far. You're barefoot, barely dressed. And the barn is burning. You crawl through the side, avoiding the doorway. The ground is cold, damp, real. You press your palms into it like it might steady your thoughts. Somewhere nearby, a child is crying. Not a wail, just the sound of breath stuttering out between fear and confusion. It doesn't last. A sharp voice follows it. Then silence again. You run without standing up past what's left of the blacksmith's shed, past a goat with its throat cut, still tied to a fence post, past the church where the bell still hangs, useless and still. You don't look behind you. Because fire doesn't just burn wood, it burns memory. It makes everything before it feel like a dream. And right now, your dream is ending one torch at a time. You're running now, not fast, not in a straight line, just moving, low to the ground like an animal that doesn't want to be seen. The grass is wet, and it clings to your feet with every step. Your toes are already numb, scraped, sliced open on things you didn't see. Sharp stones, broken pottery, pieces of your life scattered across the village like warning signs. But pain isn't something you can focus on. Not yet. Not while the air still smells like ash and blood. The barn is behind you. A dull orange glow flickers through its seams, swallowing what's left of the hay and the old tools your father once used to mend the cart. You don't look back. You've learned by now, looking back only slows you down. You hear footsteps ahead, not loud, not running, just steady. A rhythm that doesn't belong to you. You drop into a ditch beside the old barley field, barely deep enough to hide your body. The ground is soaked. Your dress clings to your legs like it wants to hold you in place. A thorn snags your shoulder. You stay still anyway. The footsteps pass close. Close enough to smell them. Leather, smoke, sweat, something metallic. You don't breathe. Your heartbeat fills your ears so loudly. You wonder if they can hear it too. But they don't stop, don't turn, just walk past, like they're choosing who lives and who doesn't with each casual glance. After a while, the noise behind you shifts. It becomes a rhythm again. Not boots or bells this time, but panic short, sharp. Someone is calling for their mother. Someone else is shouting names into the dark. A man is pleading, not in anger, but in a voice too broken to carry. You know those voices. You grew up with them, shared bread with them, Saturday beside them at feast days and funerals, and now they're unraveling one by one. You rise slowly aching like someone 10 years older. You stay low, careful not to make the grass hiss beneath you. The ground is full of things, shards of a clay jug, a child's wooden toy, the top half of someone's shoe. Yours are still back at the door, where you dropped them before the screaming started. It feels like days ago. You don't miss them now. Shoes slow you down. You see others in the distance. Not many, just shadows slipping between buildings or pressed against hedgerows, waiting for a moment that may never come. One girl darts into a goat shed, another climbs into the roots of a fallen tree and curls into herself like she's trying to disappear. You understand, disappearing feels like the only kind of survival that's still possible. Your legs hurt, your feet burn, but you keep moving, but your stillness is louder than footsteps, because someone, somewhere, is watching, and because if you stop, if you slow down to tie a sandal or catch your breath, you'll be too late. This is not a morning for comfort. This is not a morning for dignity. This is a morning where the difference between living and not is knowing when to leave everything behind. Even your shoes. You duck behind a low stone fence, knees trembling, breath catching in your throat. The village still burns in places. You can hear the crackle, smell the bitter sting of wet wood turning to smoke. That barn was never built to last forever, but it was never meant to go this way either. None of it was. The houses, the church, the sheds and stables, they were made from timber cut by your own hands, lifted by your neighbours, shaped into something like a home. But none of them were made to stop iron. You hear it before you see it, the dull thud of something hitting wood. Not once, not twice, over and over measured. Final like a drum, but heavier, you know the sound. An axe splitting a door. Then another door after that, each one giving way like it barely tried to hold. You peek through the cracks in the stones. A house not far from yours, smaller, darker, still intact, is being pulled apart. A Viking stands at the doorway, back broad, head shaved except for a knot of hair that swings when he moves. His axe rises, then falls. The door shudders. A woman inside screams. You don't see her, but you feel it. Someone tries to block the door. You hear them. A crash, a shout that turns into a grunt. Then something quieter. The axe is quick. The Viking doesn't speak. He just steps over the body and disappears inside. That house was new. It took 3 winters to finish. Every beam was measured, every nail traded for with grain and wool. The windows were shaped by hand, the walls were sealed with pitch, but all of it falls apart under a few swings from an axe that wasn't made here. You think of your own house, its wooden walls, its unlatched door. You wonder if it's still standing, if someone's torn through it already, if the table your grandfather built is lying in pieces under foreign boots, if they stepped on your father's chair like it was kindling, if they paused at all before tossing your family's stories into the flames. There's no defense. That's the worst part. The walls around you aren't thick enough. The doors weren't made for locks. The town was built with the idea that nothing terrible would ever come, that if it did, it would come slowly, with warning, with time to prepare, time to hide, time to pray. But it didn't. It came with sails, and now those sails are tied to boats, and those boats are tied to men, and those men are walking through your town like they own it. Because right now, they do. Their axes cut through more than wood. They slice through history, through peace, through everything you thought was safe. You stay behind the fence. You wait. You listen. And as another door splinters like dried bark, you learn the truth no one ever said out loud. A village is only a village until someone stronger decides it's theirs. You watch them from behind the stone fence. Your breath is shallow, caught somewhere between fear and disbelief. They don't move like soldiers. Not the kind you've seen escorting carts on trade roads, or standing stiff outside a noble's hall. These men are looser somehow, like they've done this before. Like they know exactly how much time they have, and what it takes to make a village collapse. Their hair is strange. Long in some places, shaved in others. Some wear it tied back. Others let it fall wild over their shoulders. There are tattoos on skin where you've only ever seen linen symbols. You don't understand, inked into their arms like spells. Their clothes are layered, fur, leather, wool, but nothing matches. Everything looks taken, not crafted, not woven by someone who knew their shape, but pulled from different lives and sewn back together for one purpose. They're armed, of course, not just with axes, though there are plenty of those. You see swords too, long ones, short ones, blades shaped like they were made to hurt more than once. You see spears, knives, a hammer stained and chipped. One man carries what looks like a bow, but he never uses it. He doesn't need to. Their shields are painted, not brightly, but with marks that feel personal, circles, beasts, runes that stretch across the wood like scars. You don't know if they mean anything, you don't care. What matters is how confidently they carry them, not like tools, like parts of their bodies. They laugh sometimes. That's the worst part. Not a joyful laugh, not warm, but loud, sharp, like they're telling each other jokes you'll never understand. One man picks up a chicken, holds it by the wings, and spins it in the air like he's showing off. Another tips over a barrel and watches the contents spill across the ground just to see the shape of the mess. You wonder what they're looking for. Not just gold. There isn't much of that here. Maybe some in the monastery, if the monks didn't hide it fast enough. But most of the houses, your house, your neighbours, hold little more than tools, bread, simple things made slowly by careful hands. But that doesn't seem to matter. They take what they can carry, what they like, what amuses them. They move like people who expect no punishment. You wonder who they are, what their homes look like, what sea they crossed to get here, and why this place, your place, was the one they chose. You were told they came from the north, cold places, harsh lands. You were told they worship strange gods, that they burn their dead in boats and drink from horns and eat meat with their hands. But that was all stories. Until now, they're not warnings. They're not shadows across the water. They're here in your streets, in your fields, with your food in their hands and your firewood in their teeth. And suddenly, it doesn't matter who they are. What matters is that they saw your village and decided to take it. The church is just ahead, its stone walls grey with soot and smoke, its narrow windows flickering with the reflection of flames from the village behind you. It's the one place that hasn't been torn open yet, or maybe it has. And you just haven't heard the sound of its silence collapsing. You move toward it anyway. Not because it's safe, but because when you've run out of places to go, you run to the last one built with more than timber and hope. You slip inside through the side door. It isn't locked. It never is. The smell hits first. Incense, faint and clinging beneath the smoke. Beeswax and old wood and sweat. Not the sweat of labor, but the kind that comes from fear. From bodies packed into corners, praying they can fold themselves small enough to go unnoticed. It's not quiet, people whisper, even when they try not to. A child sobs against her mother's chest. A man mumbles words too fast to understand, hands gripping the edge of the altar like it might carry him away. The priest stands near the front, pale and motionless, as if he's already carved from stone. His mouth moves. Maybe a psalm, maybe nothing. You don't know why you came here. No one does. It's instinct. When the world burns, you go to the one place you were told might save you. Not because it has weapons, but because it has symbols. A cross above the doorway, a few relics in a box beneath the pulpit. Paintings of saints who never knew fire like this. But prayers aren't plans. Not today. Not against men with axes and hands used to taking what they want. You know it. Everyone here knows it. Even if they won't say it out loud, they're praying for mercy, not victory, for escape, not defense. The kind of prayers that taste like desperation in the mouth. There's a banging sound close, a door slamming open somewhere nearby. Everyone freezes. Even the priest stops his muttering. Eyes turn to the windows, to the shadows just beyond the glass. You hear footsteps outside, laughter, the sound of something thrown, a pause, then more footsteps fading again. Not yet, you think. Not this building. Not now. A woman near the back starts to cry, quietly into her shawl. You recognize her. She used to sell eggs. Her hands shake like she's carrying something, but there's nothing in them now, just memory and fear. You sit beside her. Say nothing. There's nothing to say. You both stare at the floor, at the stones worn smooth by years of kneeling. You wonder how many footsteps it took to shape them, how many Sundays, how many lifetimes of belief. And if any of it matters now. Outside, the sound of breaking doesn't stop, it just shifts. A window here, a gate there. The world keeps falling apart while you sit still, repeating words you barely remember. Because in this place, on this day, prayer is all you have left. And even that is starting to feel like something already. They never head for the houses first. Not really. Not when there's a monastery nearby, you knew that. Everyone did. You just never thought it would matter. The monastery stands a short walk from the village, tucked behind a low stone wall, surrounded by rows of herbs and silent soil. It isn't grand. There's no gold dome, no fortress, like gate. Just a few narrow buildings, a garden, and the hum of prayer that once drifted over your town like smoke from a quiet fire. The monks there were quiet men, gentle. Faces lined not with age but with habit. They copied texts by candlelight, planted onions in rows, fed birds that weren't afraid of hands. But that's not what the Vikings saw. They didn't see faith or kindness. They saw silver chalices, manuscripts bound in leather, bells made of metal soft enough to melt. They saw a place without weapons and without walls. And so, when the sails appeared, when the first boots hit the shore, they went there first. You didn't see it. You were still in the village, still running, but you heard about it. Saw the smoke, heard the shouting start, then stop. There weren't many screams. That's what stayed with you. Not silence, but the wrong kind of quiet. The kind that spreads too fast. Like a curtain being drawn across the face of the land. Now, sitting in the church, knees stiff on the cold stone floor, you imagine what it looked like. You picture the doors of the scriptorium torn from their hinges, ink spilling across the floor like blood, pages ripped from years of work, tossed into the dirt without thought. A monk gripping a candle like it might protect him, eyes wide as iron pressed against his chest. They took everything, not just the things that glitter. They took the salted fish, the dried apples, the wine hidden beneath the stairs. They took the cow that grazed in the courtyard, the small iron tools used for repairs, the bolts of wool intended for trade. They even took the soap, though they likely had no intention of using it. The ones who survived, if any, will not return, not here, not to the village. They'll wander into the forest or the hills, or disappear into the kind of silence you can't climb back out of. You think of the illuminated book the old monk once showed you. He turned the pages like each one was made of breath, gold leaf shining in the light, bright enough to make the eyes water. It's gone now or burning. Or tucked inside someone's sack, treated like a pretty object from a strange land. The monastery went first, because it was rich in the way that matters during raids and worthless in every way that might stop one. You don't know if it will ever be rebuilt, or if anyone will bother trying. Some things once taken don't come back. They don't get replaced. They just vanish. You stayed hidden for as long as you could. Everyone did. Some beneath floorboards, others in the root cellars meant for turnips and salted meat. People crawled into barrels, climbed into lofts, crouched beneath beds and behind sacks of grain. Pressing their bodies into the dust and shadows like that might be enough. As if silence alone could make them invisible, but it didn't matter. They checked everything. You learned quickly that hiding wasn't safety. It was just a delay, an extension of fear by minutes, maybe hours if you were lucky. The raiders weren't rushing. They moved like men who had all the time in the world. They didn't need maps or questions. They knew exactly where to look. They pulled apart cupboards, kicked open trapdoors, tossed aside baskets that hid more than apples. They flipped tables not out of anger, but with the slow confidence of people who've done this before. You saw one house cracked open like a shell. The family inside had curled together beneath a bench, huddled so tight they might have looked like a pile of clothes in the dark. But the Viking who found them wasn't guessing. He lifted the bench, tilted his head, and waited. Then reached down and pulled the father out by the arm. No shouting, no ceremony, just the methodical sorting of a life. There were people who tried to run deeper, into the woods, into caves, into places only children usually remembered. But even the forest wasn't quiet anymore. The sound of branches snapping under boots echoed too clearly in a place that used to hold birdsong. You heard rumors of someone hiding in a well, lowered down with rope, thinking the stone walls would protect him. No one's pulled that rope back up. And the cellars. Those were the worst. Meant for food. Not people. You could barely breathe in them once too many bodies crammed into the dark. You could hear the scratch of fingernails on earth, people digging at the walls with trembling hands like they thought they might tunnel out through sheer will. One mother smothered her own sobs with a child's blanket. Her child wasn't crying anymore. You remember hiding once, long before today, a game, back when the world was still kind. You'd tucked yourself into the hayloft and waited to be found. Holding in laughter, someone called your name from below. You stayed there for hours, long after the game had ended, just to see how long you could go without being seen. Hiding isn't about being clever. It's about being quiet when everything around you is breaking. It's about the cold press of your spine against stone, the dry bite of dust in your mouth, and the knowledge that you're not really out of sight. You're just next. Because sooner or later, every door opens. Every root cellar is checked. Every silence ends. And when it does, there's no pretending it was ever safe. When it finally quiets, when the last door has been broken, and the last scream has thinned into silence, you begin to notice what's gone. Not just the things on fire, not just the people missing from the streets, but everything that once made this village feel like something more than a collection of huts and fences. You walk through it like someone drifting through a dream that used to be familiar, but now feels strange, rearranged. The doors hang crooked. The gardens are trampled. Half a sheep lies in the path, its legs bent wrong, its eyes glassed over, like it didn't understand what happened either. They didn't just take gold. There was never much gold to begin with. What they wanted was everything else. What you used, what you loved, what you never thought someone else might notice. They took the cows, the hens, the goats you raised from the spring, the grain sacks, the winter salt, the sharpest knives from your neighbors' hearths, even the good pots, the ones saved for feast days. They took wool still hanging on drying lines, pulled it down with the same ease they tore cloth from beds. They took the wheels of cheese hidden in the smokehouse, the bottles of honey wine buried behind stone. They even pried up floorboards to find the things you thought were well hidden. They took your father's hammer, the one he used to build the roof over your head. They took your sister's necklace, the one with the shell from the river, worthless to anyone but her. They took the small wooden box your grandmother gave you, even though it only held 2 dried flowers and a button. They took anything that could be carried, and sometimes things that couldn't, dragging them behind like trophies. But worse than that, they took people. The girl from the edge of town, gone, and her brother too. A boy barely old enough to lift a shovel. A woman who tried to hide and was found with her arms wrapped around her child. Some were led away on foot, others dragged. Not everyone was killed. Some were taken for something else. You don't know where, you don't know why, and not knowing is worse. The priest is gone. So are 2 of the monks. One of them was too old to walk. You don't know if he went willingly, or if they carried him out like luggage. They took your safety. That quiet sense that tomorrow would be mostly like today, that meals would be there, that the door would stay shut, that your name wouldn't vanish from someone else's mouth without warning. You run your fingers through the dirt in front of your home, what's left of it. The ground still smells like fire and something else, something sharp and metallic, like blood dried into wood. You wonder if you'll ever get any of it back. But you already know the answer. They didn't just take what you had. They took the shape of your life, and they left you with nothing that feels like yours anymore. It would be easier if they had taken everything, if the ground had been scrubbed clean, if the village had vanished with the smoke, but they didn't. They took what they wanted and left the rest, and what they left behind is worse. A bowl cracked in half, a wheelbarrow tipped sideways, one wheel spinning like it still remembers running, ash clinging to the edges of roofs, settling into every open window. The smell is everywhere. Not just fire, but something deeper, flesh maybe, fear soaked into wood, a kind of damp blackness that won't lift, no matter how wide you open the doors, if the doors are even still standing. The houses look like they've aged 100 years overnight. The thatch hangs like wet hair, and the walls lean in as if they've given up trying to hold themselves upright. The fences have gaps now, slats snapped or taken for kindling. The animals that weren't stolen wander loose, dazed. A pig limps through a collapsed cart. A hen sits silently in a pile of soot, not moving even when you pass close. The monastery is quiet. What's left of it? Burnt edges, blackened books turned to pulp by rain. You try not to look too long. The church bell is still there, but no one rings it. No one speaks loud enough to be heard from more than a few feet away. Voices don't rise here anymore. They hover low, pressed to the ground, like smoke refusing to lift. People begin to emerge slowly, faces streaked with ash and silence. They don't ask what happened, they know. They don't ask who is missing. They know that too. They just start to walk, some toward the ruins of their homes, others toward the trees, unsure if they'll return. A man kneels beside a field and lifts a burnt shovel like it might still be useful. A woman stands outside the remains of her house, holding a single shoe. It's too small to be hers. You find things you didn't expect. A toy half melted. A patch of fabric snagged on a branch. A page from a book floating in the stream, ink washed away to nothing. You keep looking for something that tells you this was real, because it still doesn't feel like it. It feels like a nightmare that clung too tightly to the day. You sit down in the dirt, your feet are raw. Your hands don't shake anymore. There's nothing left in them to tremble. Around you, the world doesn't feel like it ended. It feels paused, like something's holding its breath. But what they left behind is proof. This isn't waiting, this is after. And everything from before, every laugh, every meal, every small thing you forgot to notice is already gone. They left you with ruins, with the shape of things that used to be whole. And now it's your task to walk through the pieces, not to fix them, not yet. Just to understand what's no longer there. When the sun rises, it doesn't look any different. It still pulls itself up slow and pale over the hills, casting long shadows across the fields. but nothing feels the same. The world is quieter now. Not peace, like something large has moved on, and everything left behind is trying to remember how to stand still again. Smoke still curls from some places, thin and tired, like even the fires are done. You step over what used to be a doorway, careful not to catch your foot on the broken plank. You don't know why you're careful. There's no one left to tell you to mind the step. The streets, or what's left of them, are full of ash. It gets into your eyes, your mouth, your skin. Everything tastes like it. You pass someone you know or used to know. Their hair is singed, their face grey with soot. You nod, they nod back. No one speaks. Words feel too loud now, too clean. The sky is clear, but it might as well be raining. You feel soaked all the way through, not with water, but with something heavier. The weight of what's been left behind and what you're still carrying. The church stands, though its doors are gone and the altar's cloth is burned along the edges. Some people gather there not to pray, just to be near each other. It's not comfort they're looking for, just company. Proof that someone else survived, that someone else understands. You join them. You sit on the stone floor and close your eyes, but you don't sleep. Sleep feels too far away now, like something that belonged to another version of you. A man coughs. A child asks for water. Somewhere outside, a cart creaks. Someone is already trying to clean, picking up splinters one by one and placing them in a pile like it matters. Maybe it does. Maybe it's all anyone can do. Start small. Pick up the things that still have shape, even if nothing has meaning yet. Later, you walk to the edge of the village. The boats are gone. There's no sign of them. Just deep gouges in the mud where the hulls were dragged back to sea, and a few bits of rope tangled in reeds. It doesn't look like a war happened here, not from a distance. Not if you didn't already know. But you do. You sit on the bank and watch the water. It moves like it always has. Steady, cold, indifferent. It doesn't remember what came ashore. It doesn't care. You dip your fingers into it, half hoping it will carry some part of this day away from you. But the feeling stays. Heavy, wet. This is the day after, and it already feels older than it should. Like it was waiting for you before the raid ever began. Like it knew you'd be sitting here, trying to understand a silence that will never stop echoing. As the sun lifts higher, people begin to search, not for what can be saved, but for who is missing. It starts quietly, someone calling a name, then another, the sound of it rolling through the village like a question without an answer. Some names are said once, then never again. Others are repeated over and over, like repetition might summon the person back from wherever they were taken. You try to count. You try to keep track of who was there the day before, who ran, who hid, who hasn't come back. It doesn't take long to realize the numbers don't add up. The ones you're sure of are the ones you find. Not whole, not always recognizable. A man lies curled behind the granary, face to the wall like he thought it might protect him. A child's sandal sits beside the well, clean and dry, untouched by everything else. In the ruins of a house near the edge of the village, you find a shawl. You've seen 100 times folded neatly on a bench that no longer has legs. No one is sitting beside it. They took some alive. That much is clear. You find the drag marks, rope fibers, a handprint pressed into the dirt so clearly that it feels fresh. You want to believe those people will come back, that the ones taken are just somewhere else waiting. But you know better. The world doesn't give back what the sea has taken, not really. A boy walks from house to house with a list in his hand. It's not official, just something he started scribbling on the back of an old prayer sheet. He marks names as he hears them. Adds little notes, last seen near the church, was hiding in the smokehouse. May have run. You watch him fold the list. Every time someone starts crying, sometimes he doesn't ask. He just nods and moves on. You don't know how to say who's gone. It's not just people, it's relationships. Roles. The woman who kept the songs alive, the old man who mended boots, the child who used to carry bread from door to door, too small to be afraid of strangers. Each absence is larger than the space they leave. Each one changes the way the village sounds when the wind moves through it. By midday, the silence is heavier. Not because no one's speaking, but because of who isn't here to speak at all. You sit beside what used to be a gate and listen. Every voice that passes carries a crack in it now, something broken in the middle. Everyone speaks like they're unsure the words will stay together long enough to be heard. No one rings the bell, no one sings. You try to count the lost again in your head, but the numbers slip. Not because you forget them, but because they aren't numbers anymore. They're people, they're stories. They're the shape of your village before it became something else. And now all you can do is carry their names quietly, completely. Because there's nothing left here loud enough to do it for you. By the next morning, the smoke has mostly cleared, but everything still smells like what happened. The air clings to you. You breathe it in and it settles behind your eyes, heavy and bitter. The ash doesn't move unless you move it, and no one really wants to. But people begin anyway. Not because they feel ready, just because there's nothing else to do. You see a man with a rake trying to gather the pieces of his fence like maybe they'll fit back together. A woman pulls burnt straw from her doorway and sets it in a pile. A boy turns over broken dishes one by one, brushing off soot as if they might go back on the shelf. They won't. But still, he does it. You start in your own place. What's left of it? The roof didn't burn, but the walls are scorched, and one corner of the floor has caved in where something heavy fell or someone stomped through it. You step around the wreckage carefully, not because you're worried about getting hurt, but because it feels like stepping on memories. You pick up a spoon, bent and blackened. You hold it too long before setting it down again. Not everything needs to be saved. Someone passes by with a bucket of water. Not to drink, just to douse the last smouldering patches where the fire still whispers. Another person carries a small sack of flour, untouched in the back of a pantry. They hold it like it's gold. In this new version of life, maybe it is. You don't speak. You just nod. Everyone is learning the same quiet language. Now, one built on glances and gestures and breath held in the throat. The church opens its doors again, but this time it's not for prayer, it's for the tools. What's left of them: hammers, knives, old nails bent back into shape. People gather there not to worship, but to rebuild. The priest sits among them, still silent, sleeves rolled to the elbow, dirt under his fingernails. His voice has gone somewhere deep. Maybe it'll come back, maybe it won't. There's no real plan. No one stands up and says what happens next, so people do what they can. They clear what can be cleared. They tie what can be tied. They try to find the edges of normal again, even if they're jagged now. You take a broom and start sweeping the floor, even though the wind pushes more ash inside as you work. You do it anyway, not because you think it will make a difference today, but because tomorrow is still a place that might exist. The village doesn't look like itself, not yet. Maybe not ever, but it breathes a little. Through the cracks, through the effort, through hands that keep moving even though the heart hasn't caught up. You don't clean because you expect things to go back the way they were. You clean because there's still something here worth holding on to, even if it's only the space where hope used to be. At first, no one really speaks about it, not directly. You mention the fire when someone asks why your hands are blistered. You say the barn fell when someone wonders where the animals went. You nod when someone looks at you too long and says nothing at all. It becomes easier that way, to answer without speaking, to acknowledge without explaining, because talking about it too plainly would make it real, in a way you're still trying to avoid. So you all speak around, like walking in a circle around a hole in the ground, careful not to fall in. You notice how voices drop now, even when they're not talking about the raid. Everything is softer. The blacksmith talks to himself in a murmur. Children whisper when they play, and even then, it's not the kind of play it used to be. No more pretend battles, no more shouting, just quiet stacking of stones or sitting in the dirt with sticks, not building anything, just moving them around. One night someone tries to say it out loud. You're sitting near a fire, a small one, nothing like the one that came before. A man stares into the flames and says, "When they came," but his voice stops there. No one asks him to go on. No one fills in the silence. You all let it hang, and eventually it disappears like smoke into the night air. Some things come back slowly. Laughter now and then. Someone telling a story about something that happened long before. Something safe and silly and small. You listen, you smile, you let the warmth of it pass over you. But it always fades quickly, like it's not allowed to stay too long, like the sound might wake something still hiding under the ash. In the market, what's left of it, people talk about the weather, the crops, the tools they still need to find. But not about the people who are gone. Their names are quiet now, only spoken in the corners of houses under blankets when no one else can hear. It's not shame. It's not forgetfulness. It's something else. A fear that saying too much might make the loss settle deeper into the bones, like a cold that never leaves. You catch yourself doing it too. Someone asks about your neighbor, and you just shake your head. You don't say she was taken. You don't say her house still smells like bread that never finished baking. You don't say that you keep hearing her laugh when the wind moves through the trees a certain way. You just lower your eyes and change the subject. Because the raid didn't end when the boats left. It stayed, it settled, and now it lives in the spaces between your words, in the breath you hold before you speak, in the way you choose silence over memory. Not because you've forgotten, but because remembering too loudly still hurts more than you're ready to feel. It came slowly, not as a shout, but as a sermon. Not the first week, or even the second. At first, the priest said little at all, his voice broken into pieces by the smoke and silence. But then came the words measured quiet, like a lesson more than a warning, like something you were already supposed to know, that suffering comes with sin, that God sees everything, that perhaps the flames were not only from the torches of men, but from something higher, something holy. Something disappointed. You sit in the pews because there's nowhere else to go, and because it's what you've always done. The benches are still scorched at the edges, the windows are still blackened, but the shape of the church remains, and sometimes routine feels like survival. So you listen, and when the priest says it, when he suggests that maybe the raid happened because the village had strayed, because the people had grown careless or proud or too slow in their prayers, you feel something inside you go still. You look at the faces around you. No one says anything, but some nod, not because they believe it maybe, but because they need a reason, a framework, something to hold on to when nothing else makes sense. It's easier sometimes to blame yourselves than to accept that pain came for no reason at all. That violence arrived not as punishment, but as chance. You wonder what sin the children committed, the ones who never returned. You wonder what lesson was meant in the burned hands, the broken homes, the empty cradles. You wonder how much of this guilt is meant to comfort the survivors by pretending they had control all along. Outside, the world continues slowly. Fields are replanted, walls are rebuilt, but the words linger. They float through the village like seeds on the wind. You hear them in conversations that begin with questions and end with shame. Perhaps we forgot a holy day. Perhaps someone brought it upon us with a broken vow. Perhaps the silver in the monastery was prideful. Perhaps the voices of women were too loud. Perhaps we asked for this, The church does not say it all at once. It weaves it in piece by piece, with scripture and sorrow, with folded hands and downcast eyes, and you begin to carry it even if you know it isn't yours. Even if you were there and you saw the way the raiders moved, and you know no prayer would have made a difference. Still, part of you wonders, because when no answer comes from heaven, you start to search for it anywhere. And sometimes the most dangerous answer is the one that arrives dressed in reverence. The one that tells you it wasn't just violence, it was judgment, that you were not simply attacked, you were found lacking, and somehow in all this ruin, that's what begins to hurt the most. Time moves on because it has to. The fields grow again, the seasons shift, a new roof goes up and then another. Smoke rises from hearths, but now it smells like food again, not destruction. Children begin to play a little louder. The bell rings again, though only for mass. And you start to laugh sometimes, though it still catches in your throat when it comes too quickly. On the surface, things return, but beneath it, under the wood and the stone and the quiet prayers, something remains unsettled. You find yourself listening for sounds that aren't there, the scrape of oars, the distant beat of a drum, the sharp crack of splintered wood. You tell yourself you are being foolish, that it's over, but your body remembers what your mind tries to forget. You sleep lightly now, even years later. The smallest creak wakes you. You rise at every gust of wind that hits the shutters too hard. You check the door twice, 3 times, every night. You keep your shoes close. You never let them rest too far from your bed. And when you hear someone shouting in the distance, your first thought isn't curiosity. It's danger. It always is some. Of the children born after don't understand, they ask why the old trail to the shore has never been cleared, why the watch post stands unmanned but still swept, why no one builds too close to the edge of the water. You don't have an easy a sense that the sea still holds the shape of the ships that came before, that it remembers the weight of foreign feet pressing into the mud, and it wouldn't take much for them to come again. You learn to carry it with you, this quiet watchfulness. It becomes part of how you move, how you speak, how you trust. Even celebrations feel different now. Lighter, yes, but also guarded. No one drinks too deeply. No one strays too far from the fire. Someone always volunteers to keep watch, even if nothing has happened in years. Even if it seems unnecessary. Especially then, you build again. Not just homes, but rules, traditions. Stories passed in whispers to remind the next generation that walls are not the same as protection, that quiet does not always mean it's over. And you watch them grow, these new ones with stronger arms and softer eyes, and you wonder if they'll forget, if one day they'll walk the shoreline without flinching, if they'll ever hear a ship sail and think only of trade. But not you. You will always carry that morning, in the way your shoulders tense at the scent of burning wood, in the pause before unlocking the door, in the way you walk, always aware of the edges. You survive. But survival has a shape, and yours looks like someone who never truly stopped running. Even when you stood still, they called, you lucky you weren't taken. You weren't killed. You weren't left bleeding in the grass or burned into silence. Your house still stood. Even if the walls were scorched and the roof sagged, you could walk, you could speak, you remembered your name. That made you one of the lucky ones, or so they said. But you never felt lucky. You felt hollow, still breathing. Yes, but never quite full again. People said it like a gift, like survival was something clean, but it never was. It came with guilt and noise and memory that stuck to your skin like soot. Luck felt like a word spoken by those who hadn't seen what you had, or who had, and needed to say something to keep from breaking. You didn't correct them. You let them say it. You nodded and smiled if smiling seemed appropriate, and you didn't argue, because arguing meant remembering. And remembering meant bleeding again from wounds that had only just stopped. The ones who died had stories that stopped, but yours kept going. Whether you were ready or not, there were still floors to sweep, bread to bake, livestock to tend when there were livestock again, and there were names you had to say out loud in the hope that someone might still answer. Most didn't. Some came back. Not many. A girl returned half a season later, walking alone, barefoot and silent. She didn't speak for weeks, just sat near the edge of the fire and stared at the flames like she was watching. Something that no one else could see. You didn't ask what had happened. You just gave her a blanket and sat nearby. If it means you were too small to matter, or too fast to catch, or simply standing in the wrong place at the right time. You wonder how many others were called lucky, sitting in their villages with the same ache behind their eyes, the same habits, the same weight. Over time, you learned to live inside the quiet, to grow things again, to love what could be loved, to find meaning in little. You told stories, some true, some shaped to be gentler than the days that birthed them. You watched the sea and the sky and the road, and never let your guard fall all the way down. And still, every now and then, someone would say it again, that you were lucky, and maybe you were. You had your hands, you had your voice, you had your memory, though it cost you sleep. You had a life after, and even if that life was smaller, slower, stitched together with silence and caution, it was still yours. And in a world that could take everything in a single morning, maybe that was as close to lucky as anyone ever got. That was what a Viking raid felt like, if you lived in the town they chose. Not just blood and fire, but the silence after. The years spent rebuilding what couldn't be replaced. The weight of memory carried in quiet glances and sleepless nights. It wasn't glory, it wasn't legend, it was survival, and it never left you. This has been boring history for sleep. Thanks for listening. Rest well if you can, and if you hear something on the wind tonight, oars maybe, or the soft creak of wood, don't worry, it's probably just a dream, probably good night.